Fred Richani of TSC News. On this week's episode, we interview NFL agent Craig Domann of 360 Sports about the updated salary cap, the contracts rising and falling, and the latest on the 17-game season. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this interview from TSC.
Thanks for having me on again. Hey man, 17 games is something that's been brewing now for more than 5 years. You know, the NFL is a money business, and they're always looking for ways to increase revenue. Everybody knows, for goodness, probably the last 10, 15 years, the whole preseason has been a joke. Teams don't know what really to do with the 4 games. You know, sometimes they're cutting guys before the 4th game that maybe should be playing in the 4th game. The vets and the super starters, you don't really know what to do with them. So now we've knocked that down to 3, you know, after last year having, you know, a couple. So bottom line is, I think that the biggest thing with respect to the 17 games is not so much the money. It's really the records. You know, now you have one more game to get to 1,000 yards. Now you got one more game to get to 5,000 yards passing. What does that do for the records, and how do we compare 16 versus 17? And I'm sure they went through this, you know, a couple decades, 3 decades ago when they went from 14 to 16. And because we had 16 games for so long, it really became a moot issue. But for the next 3 or 4 years, especially as it pertains to even negotiations, how do you compare apples to oranges when you're comparing 16 versus 17? So I'm asking you, Fred, what do you think?
Man, I didn't think about it from a record standpoint. That's pretty interesting. And you brought up that's a really good point you brought up, and it actually makes me think, since, you know, I'm talking to an agent here, incentive-based deals. Do you see that inclining more players to take incentive-based deals based on the fact that, well, now you got one more game to reach that goal?
I would say no, because what players want is more guaranteed money. Mm-hmm. Because all it takes is one play on one day to get hit and your season's over. So the incentives are basically a wash. And so so from a player's perspective is, how can you get drafted the highest as possible? Not because it's so cool to be in the 3rd versus the 4th, because there's more moolah. I mean, the more money you get, the better. And then when you get paid, what everybody's looking at is not so much, hey, you got a $1 zillion deal. It's, what are you really getting? What's the worst case scenario? What if the coach that went to bat for you and the GM that signed you isn't there at the end of year 1? And the new people that come to town, the new sheriff in town, doesn't even want you on the team. What are you going to get? Sometimes players are on the team not because they want them, but because they have to keep them. And as a player, you always want to outperform your contract, because if you continually outperform your contract, you will play forever, in perpetuity, until your body falls apart. But as soon as you underperform, now the leverage switch, you know, shifts to the team, and you don't know what's going to happen. So that guarantee becomes really important. So when those guys are signing those mega deals, and let's say 50% is guaranteed, that means 50% is not guaranteed. Mm-hmm. So as an agent, what you care about is maximizing the certainty of the money that's in the contract, not so much wanting to have incentives. So if your guy has the world's best year ever, he can make more. Because if your client has the world's best year ever, you're going to go back to behind closed doors, you're going to go to the GM and say, hey, we got to redo this deal.
I could see it just affecting things in so many ways. Also, you know, in terms of the patience a team might have with a player, I'll just throw out a name like Carson Wentz, because he was in the news, you know, this past season. Like, you know, does a team, if a guy like Carson Wentz struggles down the stretch, does a team make a move sooner knowing they have that, you know, extra game, as opposed to saying, you know, there's only 4 games left or X amount of games left, you know, we roll with them. So it's definitely very interesting. Now, the other interesting thing that I don't think enough people are talking about is the change in salary cap. So I have a lot of questions about this. Like, I guess my first question is, for anybody that kind of doesn't understand what's going on right now with the salary cap, can you, as an agent, as a person that's negotiating on behalf of players, kind of break down how the economics have changed for the players on the free agent market?
Yeah, so we talk about players taking pay cuts all the time. Well, in this case, the teams took a pay cut. So they took a $15 million haircut, but because the salary cap is not a hard cap, it's a soft cap. Because we can amortize signing bonuses, prorate signing bonuses into the future, and the cash and the cap typically don't equal each other in any given year, it really doesn't matter. Yes, the teams can complain in negotiations, hey, we need your guy to take a haircut. We need your guy to take a little bit less. We need your guy to sign a shorter term deal, prove a deal, because we got $15 million taken off the cap. But yet they can still matriculate, navigate through that salary cap and get everybody they want to get by structuring the contracts a little bit differently. So I really, even though it's never a good thing to take a pay cut, because the team pay cut trickles down to the players, but it doesn't prohibit the teams that are smart, that are good talent evaluators, that know the players they want to keep. It doesn't prevent them from keeping those players. Kansas City, some of these teams that are more in the top echelon teams, they're going to figure out a way. And the teams that are not winning, they're going to use the salary cap, the reduction in the salary cap as an excuse for not paying top dollar because they're not winning.
Now, not to pick on this guy, because I do like him as a player, but I read the news, a couple weeks back where Juju Smith-Schuster decided to stay with Pittsburgh, which is great. But the problem is, for the market, he reportedly stayed for roughly half of what he probably could have gotten from another team in free agency. And while that's good for him, I'm looking around and I'm like, damn, that might not be good for the market, although Kenny Golladay did end up getting paid by the Giants. When you see players, particularly players of that skill level or higher, take a pay cut to remain with the team, even if it's good for them, does a part of you as an agent say, damn, man, you kind of just ruined it for everybody else?
No, because even though he does impact the market, every single negotiation is independent of all the others. And there's no question that the teams are going to cherry pick their deals and say, hey, this guy got less money, you should take less money. And the agents are going to cherry pick deals and say, hey, this guy that probably didn't deserve it got a lot of money, so my guy should get a lot of money. There's no question that stuff goes on. But I think there's three factors in any negotiation that is relevant to our conversation right now. One is that what are the non-monetary components of a deal or a situation that make it attractive for a client, for a player? So is it, might have kids in school, there might be something going on in his family where he doesn't want to, he doesn't want to sell his house and move across the country. Money only does so much for you. So let me ask you the question. If you had 8 million this year or 15 million, what can you do with 15 you can't do with 8? Right?
Yeah, fair point.
Fair. And so, yes, you can blow a lot more money when you got 15, and obviously Uncle Sam's got his hand in your pocket. But the bottom line is, there's a joy and happiness component to this thing too. So number one is the non-monetary components. The second one is the behind the scenes conversations that have taken place. I'm not privy to them, but they always happen. And it's something like, hey, we just want you to do this deal. Before November 1st, we're going to revisit it and we're going to make it right. And we're going to be able to pay you a lot more than we could pay you right now. And if we pay you what we could pay you in October today, it hurts our offense because we are limited. We're cap strapped to go get some other guys that we may be able to get. We don't know what's going to happen in the draft. Depending on what happens in the draft, it's going to make it it's going to make it better for you and better for us to do it later. So that's the second thing. And then I think the third thing is that if you broke down a long-term deal into parts, like if we take any long-term deal and break it into a one-year deal, it could make Juju's deal look even worse, or it may make it not look as bad. Depends on which one you pick. So I saw an extension today with Lockett. I don't know what 69, I don't know how much was guaranteed. I just saw it, 15 minutes ago. But the bottom line is, I guarantee you it's better than Juju's. Okay. However, depending on how much is guaranteed, it may not be that much better. Mm-hmm. Because if Schuster gets to redo his deal sometime before the season's over, and he's going to go get 60% guaranteed, well, hey, we're talking about a calendar year. Instead of getting it in March or April, you're getting it in October, and you're being told you're going to get more If you wait 7 months, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of short-sighted guys say, I need my money. I don't care if I got to move to a different team in a different city with a quarterback I don't even like, in a system that I'm not a good fit, with taxes that are higher than where I'm at now. I don't care. I'm ready to go. Other people go, hey, I can sit, I can chill. I can make a decision that's not only good for me, but good for the team.
2020, thank God we survived it. We're all good, knock on wood. But a lot of things have changed. We talked off the air about just pro days and everything's virtual. We were both at the scouting combine last year, which was the last kind of major in-person NFL event for media and agents. And that could have easily been a super spreader event. You know, it was 2 weeks removed from when everything kind of shut down. Now everything's via Zoom, via Microsoft Teams. You don't have as much physical contact with players, with teams. As an agent, how much has your life and day-to-day business changed since the pandemic happened?
I think it reflects society. I mean, we don't have as much contact with our clients. We're not in person with team people as much. There's not these events that you can go to and just run into guys that maybe you haven't spoken to in a minute and reconnect, have a beer, or whatever it may be. That's the biggest thing that's changed. But as far as like the normal operations of helping your clients navigate through their careers, maximize their money, make good decisions, improve their situations. You know, not everybody, you know, typically talking heads talk about the superstars, but there's that dude that's like, he's second string. He was second team in 2020. He's going to have a breakout year in 2021. He may be an unrestricted free agent in 2022, and he's going to break the bank. How can you help that young man capitalize on his opportunity when we both know that they're probably going to draft somebody early in the draft to compete with them because he's cheaper, younger, and probably healthier, and they don't want the second string guy to make it. They want him to stay at the second string. So there's a lot of movement. So on a normal year, I think it's approximately around 23 roster spots, give or take. And it's case by case, team by team. There's a turnover of 23 out of the 53. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. I don't know what the percent is, but it's north of 40%. So with that being said, how can you help your clients be the beneficiary of that movement? And so I think there's normally two perspectives in this business. One is, how high are your guys going to get drafted? What are the first rounders going to do? How much impact are they going to make? All the quarterbacks that get drafted this year in the first round, how soon can they become the starter? How fast can they get their team to the playoffs? All those things. Every year, it's the same story. And the second story is the guys that are making a lot of money. But we're only talking about a handful of guys out of 53 that we in those two groups. And if you really want to have a championship team, like if you look at Belichick and what he did in New England for a couple decades, it's all those other things that people didn't think were important that were important. Culture, getting guys that might be at the end of their career that have something to prove, that are going to always outplay their money. If you got a lot of guys in your locker room outplaying your money, it's going to show up in the win column. And at the end of the day, sports has become more about money than anything, but it's really about winning trophies and championships because the money is always hanging around. When teams win championships, whoever has the Lombardi at the end of the year, it's kind of funny. Everybody gets paid. And if the team they're with can't afford to keep them, somebody else wants them. So I really think that part of my job with our players is focus on player development, improving your importance to your team, making a bigger impact on the field, winning, and the money will chase you. It will literally chase you down. Where I think there's a large segment of the players that are chasing the money. What do I got to do to get paid? Well, that's generally a shortcut mentality. And if you have a shortcut mentality, usually a lot of times you don't get paid.
Fantastic insight right there. And yeah, I mean, you talk about, and even, you talk about guys that can get paid anytime if they keep winning. Also, some guys are a bit of late bloomers. I mean, Derrick Henry's always been a really talented NFL player. Now he's regarded as one of, if not the best running back. But when he first got into the league, he was good, but I mean, he wasn't this good. Like some guys take more time, to develop. And as his team improved, as his team started going into the playoffs and expectations rose, so did his money, so did his contract. And yeah, you talked about Bill Belichick. I mean, I believe you've repped some guys that have been on the Patriots. These guys that come in, maybe are a little unheralded, that are kind of like the glue guys, good locker room guys. And, they end up stepping up when it matters most. And at the end, they do get paid.
Okay, so I'm going to turn into the interview for a second, Fred. Who we taking in who we taking with give me the order of the first 5 quarterbacks.
If it were me, I'd say Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Mac Jones. Actually, I think honestly you could toss up between Mac Jones and Trey Lance. There's probably some other guys I'm forgetting, but those are probably the top 5, like I'd say.
Have you noticed this almost gravitational pull that's going on in the league right now, that teams want young, cheap quarterbacks?
Mm-hmm.
Ever since, I think it was Bradford with OU was the last guy that got like the $72 million deal. Now I've got it down to 30, low 30s for the first pick. So it's like you can take more shots at quarterbacks. So a lot of the quarterbacks are getting overdrafted. And then there's another trend that's going on in the league right now, and the Rams are kind of doing it in a backdoorish way. They're wanting to get back to having a young quarterback, because the teams that have the best chance to build a championship locker room have a quarterback on their rookie deal. And so once they paid Goff and he wasn't taking them to the promised land, they bring in Stafford, but he's not going to play forever. I'm not sure. I think he's 37 or something like that, maybe 35, somewhere in there.
He's actually younger. I think he's only like he's still like in his early mid 30s. But yeah, he's got mileage though. He's taking his hits. He's got mileage for sure.
And he's won about 43% of his games. So that's a guy that may or may not know how to win. So even though when you got Aaron Donald and a bunch of studs on defense, and you build I'm not hating on Matthew Stafford. I'm just saying he hasn't shown that he knows how to win. He's shown there's certain quarterbacks that show that they've got arm talent. They can make the throws, but they haven't shown that they can win. He's one of those guys, and you can blame Detroit, you can blame his O-line, you can blame the GM, you can blame everybody. But the reality of it is none of those guys are playing quarterback. Mm-hmm. So it'll be really interesting, because if he balls out, the front office in LA is going to look like geniuses. But if he doesn't pan out, they're still going to look like geniuses, because they're going to draft a rookie. And they're going to start the whole cycle again. So, it didn't used to be this way, but now you really want to be a franchise with a young quarterback that has the potential to take you to the show. And if he doesn't, you just go get another one.
It's a good point.
Right? Because if you take a quarterback with let's say the 20th pick, that's 1/4. His whole contract is 1/4 of what Mahomes is making in 1 year. Mm-hmm. So it's not that much money. And the other part that's happened, and I feel like a trend in the league, is we commoditized running backs a handful of years ago, probably been 10, 12 years ago, where teams looked at them as like, we can do running back by committee. We can find somebody on the trash heap after the final cuts, and he can come in and be a serviceable starter. I think because of the influx of mega talent at the receiver position coming out of college last year, this year, probably every year from now on, these guys are phenomenal. They're commoditizing the receiver position. And not everybody. So there's been a few that have gotten paid the mega bucks, but Juju was probably one of those guys caught up in, hey man, we can't budget that much money for receiver right now. And I think you're going to see more of that. And the reason why is because teams are paying their quarterbacks 40+ million. And if they're not paying him 40 plus million, they got a really good one and he's on a rookie deal, that's what they're going to be paying him, like the Bills, right? So the Bills will probably be one of those franchises that don't have a high paid, not a top 10 high paid RB or receiver.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I think that trend of getting a quarterback on a cheaper deal ever since kind of the rookie wage scale got adjusted. I mean, really, I think, honestly, if I'm looking back, I think the two teams that really kind of started the trend or made it more popular were probably the Niners with Colin Kaepernick when they went to the Super Bowl, and Russell Wilson, because when he won I would think it was the Super Bowl second year and won. And then, of course, they did end up paying him over time, but for a while, he was on that cheap rookie deal. And then, of course, a few years later, he had Dak Prescott, with the Dallas Cowboys. He was a later round pick. He wasn't a first round pick. God bless him. He just got paid now, but, took a while. So, yeah, I agree. I could absolutely see some teams saying, you know what, maybe we'll go that route. And you mentioned the Rams. I think it's interesting. And this is something I want to ask you too, but I'll bring him up real quick. John Wolford, I believe he had a stint with the Alliance of American Football, the short-lived one. And there's still a lot of people that think he has potential. And to the best of my knowledge, he's still on their roster. And he would have been the starter had he not gotten injured and Jared Goff came back in for him. Well-liked guy within the organization, everything. Do you think it's going to be a little bit easier now for some teams to evaluate quarterbacks that maybe got drafted in the later rounds and got cut, or maybe got undrafted at all now that, there's no AAF anymore, but CFL still around. XFL is getting rebooted by The Rock and Danny Garcia, and sounds like they're going to be working possibly with the CFL down the road. I mean, I don't know. Football a lot better than me. Do you feel like that? Do you feel like somebody's success there? Like, let's just say, I don't know, somebody doesn't make the cut this year. Somebody gets undrafted, but they were somewhat of a prominent quarterback in college. If you see them balling out, like say in the CFL or XFL, could you see it translating more to them getting signed and getting a real opportunity down the road in the NFL?
I actually think they have a better opportunity in the NFL after they've gone somewhere else and performed. I think probably the highest barrier to entry for an NFL prospect is a quarterback that's not drafted in the first 2 days. You don't get drafted in those first 2 days. They absolutely will not give you an opportunity unless they have to. So if you look at Gardner Minshew down in the Jags, he wasn't given that opportunity. They had no choice. He was like the fourth quarterback a couple of years ago. So when you start looking at organizations that have found, quote unquote, found a late draft pick or undrafted guy, it's never by design. It's always by accident. It's always by necessity. And so if you're one of those young men that's a college quarterback that's talented, you've got all the ingredients, but you're missing something. It might be one of your measurables. Your arm talent isn't quite up to par. You're 6 foot, and yeah, everybody can talk about Russell Wilson and Drew Brees and all the guys that have done it, but there's way more guys that haven't done it that have been that height, right? So you're not going to get the opportunity. And now with 3 preseason games, which is really an audition for the backside of your roster, 25% of your games just got eliminated. And last year when we went from 90 to 80 because of COVID and because of the preseason game situation, those guys didn't get an opportunity. So my thinking is if a young man gets drafted in the 7th round and he's a quarterback, he's got to go in and tear it up. Even if he does, nobody sees it because it's all behind closed doors. They're going to cut him, maybe put him on the practice squad. The best thing he can do in a lot of cases is go play in one of these secondary leagues, be the dude, and then come back to the NFL. Because when he comes back to the NFL, he has a different brand. He has a different image. It's just the way the business is. And so unfortunately, what's going on right now is the supply chain for quarterbacks in the NFL is coming from 2 places. Early in the draft, generally in the 1st round, because 3rd rounders are getting drafted in the 1st round at the quarterback position. Okay. And savvy vets that are in their 30s that can get you through a game. The Chase Daniels of the world, the Ryan Fitzpatricks of the world, those guys, they always have a job, but they both got a breakthrough. And I don't remember exactly when Ryan got his breakthrough, but he wasn't, he was a 7th rounder out of Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. They didn't want him to be the guy. He was on multiple teams before he got the opportunity. Chase Daniels. I mean, he doesn't even look as good as Russell and Drew. Nobody wanted him to be the guy. So with that being said, if you are not an elite, if you're a quarterback and you come through the draft and you're not drafted at an elite level, first round, good luck.
Last time I checked, my friend, not only were you an agent by day and sometimes at night, but you also are a podcast host. Are you still hosting that? And can you tell us where we can find that?
Yes, you can go to my podcast, Pro Mindset Podcast. It's everywhere you can find a podcast. And what I'd like to kind of share, if I can, real quick, is one of the elements of Pro Mindset, which is an identity triangle. And so for guys that coming into the league, guys that are in the league that haven't broken through, maybe they've been on they've been on the 90 a couple times, they keep ending up on the practice squad and they just cannot break through. You got to have 3 things, and they're really the ABCs of your identity. One is you got to have, I'm going to start with B. You got to believe in yourself. C, you have to have confidence in your skills. And A, you have to have a great attitude. And if you have a great attitude, that's what other people see. That's what other people sense about you. Confidence in your skills. There isn't a player that goes to NFL that's doesn't have confidence in his skills. Now, maybe when they go against a little bit better competition, they start doubting themselves. But most of the guys that are at that level have the athleticism and they put in the work. They've been successful in college. But the it factor and the greatness comes from really your belief in yourself. Do you got it? Do you not? Do you have it or don't you? And some guys got it, some guys don't. And I can tell you that from working in this business a long time, representing, 100 plus draft picks, you can ask the old savvy vets about the rookies. About 3 weeks into training camp. Hey, what do you think of this guy? Oh, he never make it. Dude, he was a 2nd rounder. No, they're just going to keep him because they got the money invested in him and hope he figures it out. Hope the light comes on. Hope it clicks, all that type of thing. That guy's not going to be it. And why is that? It's because he doesn't have that identity that's consistent with greatness or success. And so as a business person, as a volleyball player, or as an NFL guy, if you've got that identity triangle of belief, confidence, and attitude, you got a chance to maximize your success.